Welcome to today's lesson on solving absolute value equations. So we're going to do this assignment together. Go ahead and write down number 1 and let's figure out how to solve this equation. Notice that I have an absolute value of x equals 6. Okay, so this is the most basic one that we're going to talk about because let's think about how this works. Okay, if x equals 6, then you would agree that, well, if I put a 6 in for x, then that would be a true statement. So let's figure out how to make a true statement. Okay, if I put absolute value of 6, is that a true statement? Yes, so I know x equals 6. But what else could I put inside the absolute value sign that would be 6 or be positive 6? Well, that would be negative 6. So in other words, x not only equals 6, but it can also equal negative 6. Okay? Well, there are different ways to solve absolute value equations. Okay? So I'm going to do one way in this video. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the equation into two different equations. Okay? So first of all, I know that using an absolute value, that inside it can be positive. So let's just set the equation equal to positive. Okay? But then I also know that this equation, that inside of the absolute value sign, I can set it up to be a negative. So if I make two different equations like this, I can automatically see what my two solutions are going to be. Well, this is a little bit difficult with this simple equation. Let's try another one where you'll see better how you set up two different equations so that one is positive and one is negative. Okay, so what we're going to do is exactly what I just said. We're going to take, for number 2, we're going to take this equation and we're going to make two different ones. Okay, now inside of the absolute value sign, I know that 2x minus 1 has to be positive, and I know it has to be a 5. So I'm going to go ahead and make it a positive 5. But I also know that inside of the absolute value, that number can be a negative 5 inside there. Since I know that that has to equal 5, I know it can be negative 5 because an absolute value changes a negative 5 to a positive. Okay, so these are my two equations now. And this might make a little bit more sense than our first one. I'm going to make two equations, one with a positive 5 and one with a negative 5. Now all we have to do is just solve. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides. I get 2x equals 6, so x equals 3. And then I'm going to add 1 to both sides on this equation, and I get 2x equals negative 4, x equals negative 2. Okay, now with solving any equation, we really need to go back and check to make sure that they work. Okay, a lot of times I do these with just plugging them back in and talking through them. Okay, so I'm going to plug it back into the original, not the one that I set up, but the actual original problem. Okay, so if I plug in 3 into the x, I'll get 2 times 3 right here is 6, and 6 minus 1 equals 5. So I know 3 works. I'm good with that. Okay, that one's one of my answers. Now let's take the negative 2 and plug it back in. So if I plug in negative 2 into here, I get negative 4, and negative 4 minus 1 gives me a negative 5, but the absolute value of negative 5 is a positive 5. So therefore, I know negative 2 works. And these are my answers for number 2. All right, let's try another one because they get a little different. Okay, so throughout Algebra 2, we basically encounter different types of equations. Okay, we've talked about how to solve this equation, but here's the thing. You're always going to have extra numbers that you want to deal with. You're going to look at it and think, okay, how do I work this one this time? But with extra numbers, it's easier just to move them on the other side of the equal sign. So if we add 1, okay, we get 9. And then this right here is an x plus 2 equals 8. Okay, this right here is really a multiply. And if we just multiply, or excuse me, divide 3 on the other side, I accidentally wrote 8 right there. We'll take that out. Okay, if we divide by 3, I knew I wasn't going to divide 8 by 3, right? Okay, so now my new problem is going to be x plus 2 absolute value equals 3. So just make sure you move all of those extra numbers over before you try doing the absolute value equation. We really want to have everything that's in the absolute value by itself right here, and then everything over on the other side, okay? So now I'm going to set it up with my two equations. So let's do that right here. We've got x plus 2 equals, first my positive, and x plus 2 equals the negative. Now if I subtract 2 over, I get x equals 1. And if I subtract 2 over here, I get x equals negative 5. Okay, now if we try those back into the original equation, we can try them back here, right, into this equation. That would make 3 a positive 3, and negative 5 would make a negative 3, which would be absolute value of negative 3 is positive 3. I could even try them back in the original equation. If I take 1 here, that'll make a 3. 3 times 3 is 9, and 9 minus 1 equals 8. So I know that x is going to equal 1. I know this one works. And if I do negative 5, then if I put negative 5 in here, that's going to make a negative 3. But the absolute value of negative 3 is positive 3. Then I multiply times the 3, which will give me 9. 9 minus 1 is 8. So I know that this one will work. So everything's good to go. We have two answers for number 3, x equal 1 and x equal negative 5. Okay, all right, let's try the next one. Okay, again, it's like I said that sometimes we have extra numbers, so we're going to move this 8 over on the other side. So now our equation is negative 7. Okay, now this is the one that I wanted to talk to you about as far as how different it is from the other ones, because an absolute value means that you're going to make whatever is inside here is going to become positive. So the absolute value of x must be a positive number. Well, the problem is that x can't be negative 7 then. There's no way that an absolute value is ever going to make a negative number. So in this case, the answer to this problem is no solution. This is why we check all of our answers, because if we put something back into the problem and it doesn't work, we need to know which one's the right answer and which one is the wrong answer or just simply doesn't work back in the equation. Okay? All right, let's try the next one. Okay. So again, we're going to set up our equation just like we've done before. One of them has to be positive and one of them has to be negative. So let's do 3x plus 2 equals 4x plus 5. And then we'll do 3x plus 2 equals. Now, this one has to be the negative side, right? Okay, because I know something inside of the absolute value, 3x plus 2, can be negative. Okay, so I'm going to put a negative in front of the 4x plus 5 because the whole thing can be negative. All right, so let's do this. Since this is going to be a little bit more to work this time, let's divide up the screen in half. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and move this 3x over, just because of the fact that I see that it's a 4x and I know that'll give me 1x. And then I'm going to move the 5 over here and that'll give me negative 3. Okay, so if I'm going to go ahead and work the other side and then we'll check each solution. Okay, let's do this one. So we've got 3x plus 2 negative 4x and a negative 5. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to add the 4x over on both sides. And that'll make 7x. And then I'm going to subtract the 2. And that'll give me a negative 7 on this side. So now I've got x equals negative 1. Okay, so let's check each one of these. Okay, so if I take negative 3 and put it right here, that's going to give me a negative 9. And negative 9 plus 2 is a negative 7 equals, and I'm going to put the negative 3 right here too, so that's going to be negative 12, and that'll be a negative 7. Here's the problem. The absolute value of negative 7 is 7. This is not a true statement. Therefore, that can't work. Okay, so let's try our negative 1 this time. So again, I'm going to take my negative 1, I'm going to put it right here. Okay, so that's going to make a negative 3, which negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. Okay, now negative 1 here is going to make a negative 4, and negative 4 plus 5 is a positive 1. Okay, so the absolute value of negative 1 is 1 equals 1. This is true. So my answer is x equal negative 1. Okay, notice how one of my answers didn't work, but one did. Okay, that's why we check each one of these. And if you notice, a lot of the reason why this happened is because we had this x on the other side that was starting to affect the equation again. Okay, all right, well, that's it for this video. Check out how to solve absolute value equations and make sure that you understand how to do it. Ask questions if you need help, and thank you for watching.